with the sun setting on a historic day here at Punchestown. I'm joined by Richard Forristal, Racing Post Ireland editor, to discuss the day's events. And Richard, ordinarily I would be puffing my chest out with pride about the fact there was 2 English winners on the card and there was some great racing, but of course it all revolves around the big news from today. Ken Boy, an emphatic winner of the Punchestown Gold Cup, but it was the news that followed that is the talking point.
Yeah, again, another incredible day here. You talk about the English winners. We had Rachel Blackmore winning earlier on as well, and Manella Indo. Great to see her get a Grade 1 winner here. But there was a sense this might come, and it came a bit sooner maybe than some of us expected. Ruby has decided to pack up and bring the curtain down on an absolutely glorious career. Put simply, he's the greatest jump jockey of all time. He's the best rider I ever saw. And we've been lucky to see some great jump jockeys from Richard Dunwoody, Charlie Swan and people like that. But this guy just operated on a different level, and he did it every year in and out. He suffered such injuries along the way, but he always came back and rode with the conviction of a man, who didn't endure those setbacks. He had such belief in himself, and he was so good at what he did. It was an incredible career, and for him to bring the curtain down at Punchestown was fitting. Local track for him, and a Gold Cup. He was always a great man on the good Gold Cup horses, and he was brilliant on Ken Boy, of course. It was a magical day. He caught us all a little bit unawares. I think when he waved crossing the line, there was a lot of journalists and editors inside started to get to get a bit suspicious about what he was about to do. And he actually passed up the opportunity on RT television to say anything. It was presented to him by the interviewer, and he didn't say anything. He came back in then, and there was a raucous reception. I don't know if that prompted something in him or what. He duly said something to Willie on the quiet, and when he was subsequently interviewed by Brendan McCardle in the winners' enclosure here, he said that's it. And again, he caught Brendan unawares, and he kind of had to ask him, are you saying that's it? He thought, is there not more Gold Cups in you? And he said, no, you'll never see me on a horse again. Massively dramatic. All of a sudden, we were all in a frenzy trying to make sure we gave the man some, did him some justice in the coverage. I hope we have tomorrow. But what a man, what a rider, and a great way to go out.
That's it. And I think, as you say, it did catch everyone by surprise that there were mutterings, but I had the privilege of speaking to Willie Mullins, obviously his greatest supporter, in the immediate aftermath, and Willie seemed to be completely shocked by it. He obviously said he hopes that he'll continue to work with him in some capacity, but yeah, he was completely surprised. Yeah,
so it seems, obviously a couple of the family members seem to know, that it was coming. I don't think, unless I'm reading it wrong, I don't think any of them knew that it would be today, that if he won the Gold Cup it would be today. He won on Classical Dream yesterday, he didn't do it, but I think they all knew it was going to be soon. And as I say, I suspect he made his mind up after he left the track, and by the time he got to Willie, because he didn't say anything out on the track. His father Ted is on RTE, it would have been a good platform for him to do it on, but he didn't. So at some point between the track and here, he decided right now's the moment. Willie didn't seem to know about it. It caught him unawares. But yeah, look, I mean, it was great to be here for it, and I'm lucky enough like that. I've known the guy for 20 years or so myself. Over 20 years, I would have first encountered him in Ballydoyle. And I remember writing a couple of years ago, like the first time I saw him was across the road. We were up at the local shop in Rose Green, and there was a car across the road, and there was this guy in it who I didn't recognise at the time. And I said, "Who's your man?" And they said, "That's Ruby Walsh, the next big thing." And that was the first time I came across him. And I was lucky to ride with him for a number of years. Obviously, wouldn't have been competing at the same level as he was. But the thing about Ruby, and it's like Ted as well. What you see is what you get with him. He can be abrasive, he can be blunt, he can be forthright, he's all that. But he's the same outwardly to camera on telly as he is if he met you in private. Yeah. There are some riders, sports people, who put on a facade when they're in the public domain, and you meet them privately, they're very, very different. They can be obnoxious, and so on. Ruby was very straight like that. What you saw on telly was the guy he was, and you know, we all appreciated his forthrightness and the fact that he could be blunt. He'd go through you for a shortcut if the mood took him, but he was always straight up, you know, and there was no side to him, and that's, you know, a great sports person, I suppose. I mean, that's one thing. Like, you look at him now in the context of what he's achieved over the years, and his pantheon, his place in the pantheon of all-time sports people. He's right up there. You know, he's transcended the sport, and in Ireland, I suspect he's transcended sport. Yeah. You know, because he is recognised simply as Ruby. You mention Ruby in any kitchen around the country, they know who Ruby is. It's like Lester or Elvis. Ruby is Ruby. You know, that's the impact he's made now. You know, and just great for us to be able to see it and have witnessed it.
That's it. Well, like I say, I'm sort of counting my blessings here, because I was there when Tiger Roll won the National last month, and that was a I was there moment. This felt like an I was there moment. But I think just on Ruby, for me, he was obviously 11 times champion jockey over here, but what he will be remembered for, I should think, is
possibly 12. I think, but we won't.
12.
Yeah,
you're absolutely
12,
right.
Yeah.
No, it is 12. It's his Twitter. He hasn't updated. It's his fault. But no, you're right. It is 12. But I think what he'll be remembered for is it's the big race occasions. It's kind of his ability to just maintain his cool, and regardless of the situation, just be in the right place at the right time. And if he's on the best horse, he'll win.
Yeah. He was a foil in that regard to say, for example, AP McCoy. McCoy was all about numbers, and he was a brilliant, you know, he could be brilliant on a big day too, that wasn't a problem. But Ruby specialised in big races, that was his forte. He wanted to be there on the big days, and you know, when he got the opportunities, what horses he rode: Cato Star, Hurricane Fly, Duvan, Annie Power, and his ability to deliver. Like, you'd see him in a race with so much composure when the expectation was at its zenith and everyone expected him to deliver, and the anticipation was there. Everyone would be flapping around him, and Ruby would be just sat there with a double handful, quietly going about it and getting the job done. I always thought one of his most remarkable abilities and traits was how little he did. You watch a lot of the great riders, they would all be active at a fence, they'd be asking a horse or bringing a horse back. Ruby you'd see him do so little. He'd sit there and present a horse at a fence without moving on it, and they'd jump through it fluently, you know, using minimum amount of exertions, if you like, economically. That was the thing I always looked at him that set him apart a little bit, was how little he did. You know, he was able to get the horse through a race without interfering with it. He just had that synchronicity with it or whatever. You know, just a brilliant rider.
That's it. And of course, we've got a few more days racing to go, but it's going to be difficult to kind of carry on now. I mean, that's the thing. Obviously, Willie Mullins has got no shortage of very talented jockeys in his stable to kind of fill in the gaps, but he'll be a hard man to replace. But the show must go on, I suppose. Yeah,
it's the end of an era. There's no two ways about it. What he's done is incredible. Paul Townend is a fabulous rider. He will take over as number one. Willie confirmed that for us. Naturally, that's the natural progression, just to move him up a grade. It's going to be different without him. You know, I remember 20 years ago here he won on Imperial Call. That was one of his first really big win, you know, in a chase especially. He'd won the champion bumper at Cheltenham, but it was his first big win, you know, on a big stage like that. He was brilliant. He set out from the front. That was his trademark afterwards in big races, dictating it from the front, making everyone else look silly. And that, you know, when you go through Imperial Call, Papillon, Hedge Hunter, Comanche Court, Cato Star, Hurricane Fly, we've listed some of them earlier. Like, you know, he was there with them all, and he was so good on them all, and for him to be gone now all of a sudden just like that, it's a big void. There's other great riders, you know, Davy Russell, Barry Geraghty and so on, but Ruby just had that bit of X factor, and now the sport is he's lost to the sport at that level. I'm sure we'll see plenty more of him, but you know, his presence is going to diminish, obviously, from a sporting coverage point of view.
That's it. Well, I think there's nothing else we can really say other than, Ruby, we salute you and best of luck in retirement.